Welcome to the Byline Breakdown, the podcast where we go beyond the headlines to understand the story shaping our world. I am your host, Mike Moliterno. Today we're diving into the heart of the Mahoning Valley's repopulation efforts. With us is Denise Dick. She is Special Projects Manager at the Business Journal, and she is also the author behind a story that we are about to discuss, which just so happens to be the cover story for our Growth Report 2024 Economic and Community Development Edition, which is in mailboxes this week. Thank you very much for being here, Denise.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me back.
You're welcome. And that's a fantastic photo that you have for your story.
I wonder who took it.
It was amazing.
Who took that photo?
I have no idea, but that person really knows what they're doing. Well, that's pretty cool, though. This is your first year with us, and you already got the cover of the Growth Report.
Yeah, how about that?
Yeah, you've peaked. You got nowhere else to go. All right, so let's start from the beginning. Let's talk about, let's start kind of where you do with the story of Moises Lopez,
yes,
who is here in Youngstown from Miami. And could you talk a little bit about sort of how his experience highlights the broader trend of what's going on as far as repopulation in the Mahoning Valley?
Well, Moises is from Honduras originally, and he lived in Miami for a few years. And then in 2020, he came to Youngstown because his daughter is here. He works in construction, and we met him at the class at the English Center. The English Center does. We're teaching non-native speakers how to speak English. And he said that he and the instructor both told us that he has what they call street English. He wants to learn proper English so he can communicate better with, his people he works with, people who he lives around, because as he told us, in Miami, everybody spoke Spanish. So really, learning English wasn't that much of an issue. You could communicate because many people in that community spoke Spanish. Mm-hmm. Here, not so much. So he's trying to learn English to, help his daughter get better and, exceed in his position and just better his life.
And you mentioned the English Center.
Mm-hmm.
So could you talk about the role that they play and kind of how important learning the English language is to what these people are trying to do with their lives?
Well, the English Center has been around for a long time. It's been a independent nonprofit, I think, since the 80s. And right now they don't have an office per se. They most of their classes are done virtually, which started during the pandemic because everything shut down. So they moved to virtual, and they found out that worked because a lot of people have transportation issues, or they have childcare issues, or there's conflicts with work. So they have that, but then they've also resumed their in-person, and they do those at the Michael Kusalaba Library Branch. Kusalaba Library Branch. So it's a tongue twister on the west side, and I believe they have some also at the main branch.
Mm-hmm.
So there are people from all different countries who don't speak English or don't speak English well, and they're all together at the same time, and an instructor teaches them English so that they can, help their kids in school. They can rise up in work, better their, if you can't communicate, it's hard to get a job. It's hard to find a doctor. It's hard to know what's at the grocery store and what you need. So, obviously, if you don't have that, you're going to be pretty limited in what you can do.
Well, yeah, and a couple of the some of the stuff that they talked about didn't surprise me, but it was stuff that it's that old thing where you wouldn't know about it until you tried to do it. So it was kind of, that's obvious now that I hear about it. But just They talked about, how do you know if you're sick? How do you know what the difference is between urgent care or a doctor's office or an emergency room? Or, I could just see the amount of time that would be wasted by going to the wrong place.
Right, especially if it's an emergency.
Right, yeah, exactly. Well, what we're talking about right now is one aspect of the repopulation strategy.
Right.
And some local agencies such as the Youngstown Warren Regional Chamber, mm-hmm. Eastgate Regional Council of Governments are pushing a 3-prong strategy to repopulation. This is one of the prongs.
Right.
Could you talk about what the 3 prongs are and kind of how they all work in tandem?
Retain,
mm-hmm.
receive, and return. So retain is keeping people here, like young people, for as as long as I can remember, since I was young, you wanted to go, if you got out of high school or you got out of college and you wanted to leave. I want to go someplace else. There's nothing in the valley, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure we all heard that.
Probably kind of universal.
Probably.
Yeah, but
But so they want to keep, even if they want to keep people here. Not,
right.
There's not jobs here now for a long time. When I grew up, there really weren't a lot of jobs here. So it was legitimate. But now there are. We've got all those, the high-tech industries that are already located and expected to locate to the Lordstown area, and I'm sure that will grow out from not just Lordstown but to surrounding areas. So there's that, and then the return is people who've left, who they wanted to go to another job, or even retirees. That could be part of it too. Or they're working someplace else. Get them to come back here, and then recruit or return or receive.
Yeah.
That's like what we talked about with with immigration and refugees.
So we mentioned the Youngstown Warren Regional Chamber and Eastgate are two organizations that are pushing this. Mm-hmm. But there are also, in addition to the English Center, there are other local organizations who are doing a bit more kind of boots on the ground work, actually interacting with these immigrants and refugees. Could you talk a little bit about some of those organizations and what their efforts are and how they're trying to attract and integrate these people into the community?
Well, the Ursuline Sisters Mission, similar to the English Center, they do English language services, and they have at their facility, which is in Youngstown, offer childcare. So that's a help for somebody who wants to learn language and has that need. They also help with when you're coming into this country, you have lots of documents that you have to deal with. So copying them, and they can help with that kind of thing. So that's the Ursuline Sisters Mission. And then there's a relatively new organization called Thrive Mahoning Valley. It started in 2017, initially to serve people who were moving here from Puerto Rico after the hurricanes. Because if you remember that year, there were a couple natural disasters and that were pretty devastating in Puerto Rico. So initially that's how it was founded, and it's evolved to all new. They want to serve all new newcomers to the area, and that organization is kind of behind the creation of what is still new. It's still a fledgling organization called, not an organization, a group, Mahoning Valley Immigration Coalition, and it's bringing together all those different kinds of groups. The English Center and the Ursuline Sisters are all part of it, and they're kind of learning what each does and how they can work together to serve people coming to the area.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to continue our discussion with a look at some similar efforts that are underway in nearby communities and their results right after this quick break.
Attention all business enthusiasts in Northeast Ohio and Western Pennsylvania. The Business Journal has been your trusted partner since 1984, giving insights, updates, and fostering growth in your region. From Mahoning to Mercer, from Columbiana to Lawrence, we've got you covered. For just $10 a month or $99 a year, unlock our digital troves, or get both print and digital for only $99 a year. Make the smart business choice. Subscribe now.
Welcome back to the Byline Breakdown. We are here with Denise Dick discussing the Mahoning Valley's repopulation strategies. Denise, you also took a look at some other cities such as Erie, Pennsylvania, Dayton, Ohio. I guess, what are those communities doing to attract and integrate these populations, and what can the Mahoning Valley learn from their successes and maybe some of their missteps?
Well, they both are considered welcoming cities, which is a designation from an organization called Welcoming America, and it means that they've made efforts to make their communities welcoming to refugees and immigrants. So in Erie, there's lots of different organizations. The cities in those areas work primarily not as service providers, but as sort of referrals. Like if someone comes into the city and says, or somehow can communicate what they need, well, this organization can help you with that. This organization can help you with that. It's that kind of thing. This one will help you learn English, and here's an agency where you can get legal help and things like that. So they're sort of not a referral, but like telling you how
resource.
to exactly. That's the perfect word, a resource. So in Dayton, they have a welcoming center, and it's right inside City Hall. And they've one of the things that it's called I forget the name of it. It's an ID program. It's not a state ID, but it's a person who doesn't have a driver's license or a state ID and has difficulty getting one for various reasons can go there and get this ID. And now they involve other organizations. They're not kind of the head of it anymore, but can get other ID that is recognized by services in that area to help those people. So and they also have information available in different languages, and they have it's like a number that you call where you can get like a translation, so that they can communicate with when they're going to pay their water bill. They can get someone who can help them get their questions answered, even though the employee doesn't speak, the water department doesn't speak whatever language it is that they do.
Yeah. And
in Dayton in particular, it's a sect of Turkish, and I can't pronounce it, but there's been a lot of them who have moved to the Dayton area, and they've revitalized what was called Old Dayton. And they made shops and opened other businesses, and it had been a neighborhood in decline, and they've revived it.
Yeah. Why did you choose to look at Erie and Dayton?
They were two communities that I found out and heard from different people who were doing things well.
Well, I was just thinking, they're sort of comparable to Youngstown and Mahoning Valley.
Erie definitely is, yes.
Well, Dayton's a little bit bigger, but still it's a, former industrial city that's been losing population and kind of had a blue-collar past, and that's...
Right, and actually when I talked to Thrive Mahoning Valley, Erie was one of the places they mentioned as well that they've visited.
Okay.
Too. And there's others too. Those are just the two that we looked at this time.
Sure. Could you talk about the story of Zuhair Nouri from Erie?
He's a businessman in Erie.
And I apologize, I'm sure if he's listening, I just butchered his name.
He came here in the early 90s after he was from Iraq, came with his two brothers, and it was after Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait, and they didn't think that was, they weren't in favor of that, and they rose up against it, but that didn't work, and they had to flee. They had to flee their country. So they fled to the desert, and that's where they found some people from the United Nations who told them, okay, you can go to Europe, or you can go to the U.S. And they had watched movies from the U.S. growing up and saw it as it was a land of opportunity. So they came to the U.S., and they didn't pick Erie. They wouldn't know Erie.
Sure. Yeah.
So they got sent to Erie, and he said the community just welcomed him. And they put him in housing. They got him factory jobs, and they were young. They were in their 20s at the time. And he came here. He had $100 in his pocket. He only spoke 2 words in English. They were yes and no. So he started, ground zero. Within about 6 months, he said he could have a conversation without a translator. And within a year, he was self-sufficient. So initially, he and one of his brothers, opened a car repair place. But then his health kind of deteriorated, and his doctor told him he had to do something else. So he opened another business. He has a notary business.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So I guess, we talked a little bit about how that one particular office in Dayton is right there in City Hall. Mm-hmm. How important is it to have local government assisting or at least cooperating with some of these efforts?
Well, they need to be a part of the equation. I mean, they're not going to do it all.
Right.
Like both of those cities that I've talked to, they have nonprofits that do a lot of the work, but they are a critical piece in the equation. Mm-hmm. You have to have the cooperation and willingness to recognize it's something that you want to do.
So did you come across, while you were doing this story, did you come across any challenges that you see as far as what the Mahoning Valley is facing in these efforts?
Well, one of them, and I don't think this is unique to the Mahoning Valley, but they're in the current political climate, immigration kind of has a negative connotation. And that's one of the reasons I believe that people don't, when I'm talking to these people, they don't generally often use the term immigrant. New Americans is the terminology that they use. So that's one of the things that, it's not something that everybody is going to view positively from the beginning to start. So when I asked the question to some of the people, one of the people at Thrive said, well, what those other cities have done is emphasize the good. They contribute to the tax base. They build new businesses. They provide opportunity for cultural enrichment. I mean, the food, just think about the food possibilities people from different countries would bring to the area, opening restaurants and just expose our palates to something entirely new.
Well, I always say that about just our community because you had these waves of immigrants from all across Europe and everything. And now we're starting to get some from the Middle East. Like I know a lot of people who are here from Lebanon, but you can get Eastern European food.
Right.
There's all of the Hungarian food and stuff. There's Italian food. There's Greek food. Right. There's Irish food. There's and you get all of those festivals. So it's like one more festival that you get to go to now.
Exactly.
Right.
And the more the merrier as far as food goes.
Yeah. Denise, just to recap. So what are, I guess, the main takeaways from what you found out doing this story?
That it's definitely a significant repopulation. A significant part of repopulation is new Americans, whether they be refugees or immigrants. And if you look at numbers, like people who maybe don't understand it, the Ohio Department of Development in a recent report said Ohio is expected to have a 5.7% population decline by 2050. That's 675,000 people. That's a lot. Yeah. So we're getting these new jobs like at Altium and other places out there, but you've got to have people to fill them. And the birth rate is not keeping up in Ohio. And younger people are dying younger. They've attributed it to both the pandemic as well as the opioid crisis. So you've got to get them from somewhere if we want to. And the jobs aren't going to come if we want the jobs. We want those industries. So we've got to have people to fill them. Yeah. And one thing I'll just mention, this is kind of anecdotal and whatever, but I went with you to the English Center. Right. And you took that wonderful photo.
Yes, I did. Yeah. But we met all of those people.
Yes.
And they were all, I think Vasiliki said that, they come every week. Right. They can't wait to be there. Right. They whatever they have to do to attend, they do. And, we're talking about this 3-pronged strategy of keeping people and bringing them back and receiving other people. And the one thing that I think our community has a lot to offer, particularly now. Certainly things are on the upswing. So it almost seems like they were very grateful to be here.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it's
it wasn't they weren't there because they had to be. They were there because they wanted to be.
Right. So and
it was like a family atmosphere too. Correct.
Yeah. So I think we're doing a good job of making the case for why people should stay here, why people should come back, but I guess what I was just saying is what I saw and in that room was a group of people who saw the message, heard the message, and were actually incredibly grateful to be here. And we're just, they were, if you could have asked them, if we had asked them, I'm sure they would have probably said, I don't see what all the fuss is about. We're perfectly happy. This is, this place is fantastic.
Yeah. Right. They're, I don't think they'd say anything negative at all. They were enjoyed being there. They loved their teacher. They loved what they were learning. And going back to the English Center, I think it's kind of fascinating coming in. These people, the teachers don't necessarily speak a language other than English.
Right.
And they've got people, now the night we were there, they were people that were primarily Spanish speaking, but they've had people from China and people from the Middle East and people from Turkey and, all over. So it's all different languages, but they all learn the same way. Now, she mentioned that sometimes they'll have to, if it's something more complicated, they'll use Google Translate. But primarily it's, here's English, and they teach it that way. It's not like the word for school is escuela. Escuela, school. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
It's all English, which I think
is
very interesting.
She just talks in English.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Denise, for being here today. It's an awesome story. And thank you to our listeners for joining us on the Byline Breakdown. Don't forget to subscribe for more episodes where we go behind the headlines. And if you would like to read Denise's excellent story from our growth report, a link is in the show notes. Thank you very much for listening. I'm Mike Moliterno.
You wouldn't drive a car without a map, so why navigate the business world of northeastern Ohio and western Pennsylvania without the Business Journal? Trusted since 1984, we're the compass pointing you to growth and prosperity. Digital, print, why not both? We've got subscription options tailored for every business-savvy individual. Light up your path to success. Subscribe to the Business Journal today.